First Black Ops, you see it, let's get it. Gucci. Hushpuppi scammer gets 11 years in jail. I knew he was a scammer when I first saw him, but let's check him out. He was super popular scamming people, on the internet stuff. So let's check it out. Gucci Master, business email scammer, Hushpuppi, gets 11 years. So that's what his nickname on the internet was the Hushpuppi. I had a couple aliases. So let's get into it. Watch out for those people. Cool Versace. Got the Bentley and a Rolls Royce out there. He was sentenced under his real name, Ramon, but back in his boastful days of pretending to be a serious, successful real estate agent based in Dubai, you may have seen or heard of him as Ray or given his full name, Ray Hushpuppi. To be clear, it was Raymond Oswald Abbas who wasn't pretending to have lots of money, but he was pretending to acquire his money by legitimate means. His now shuttered Instagram was awash with show off photographs, uh, pretending to extents of his wealth, including fancy cars, which we saw above, luxury travel by private jet, and high ticket shopping sprees. There's my man on the private jet. See the pilots right there. Got the Louis V's, rocking it. Unfortunately, Abbas, who was allegedly referred to himself on Snapchat as the Billionaire Gucci Master, and fortunately for numerous victims of his criminality, the photos were featured in the U.S. Department of Justice charge sheets, signed in 2020 by FBI Special Agent Andrew Innocenti, and approved by the U.S. Magistrate Judge Rosella Oliver. Grabbed and nabbed, Abbas was charged with the crime of conspiracy to engage in money laundering, quickly arrested by the Dubai police and extradited to the U.S., where he has been behind bars ever since. As we roll back in 2020, maximum prison sentence are readily handed out, but if Abbas is convicted of conspiracy to engage in money laundering, if he happens to be unlucky, exception to this rule, he'd be looking at a maximum of 20 years in federal prison. That's a crazy amount of time. So the question is, if you ask me now, would he think it was all worth it? So that, well, but more than 2 years later, Hushpuppi has been pleaded guilty to charges and been sentenced. And although he didn't get the maximum prison term, United States Judge Otis Wright gave him 135 months, which is over 11 years. We assume this will include the time already that Puppy has already spent in custody. He's also required to pay back 1.7 million in restitution to two specific victims. One, Abbas admitted to defrauding as part of his plea agreement, was 922,000 to a law firm in New York and 809,000 to a business person in Qatar. The original charges setting out that Abbas indeed has a case to answer. He should therefore be arrested and brought to U.S., making it a fascinating read. It includes extras from Hushpuppi's corresponding with various conspirators, including a money laundry from Canada. It was called Caleb, who was sentenced to 140 months, which is 11 years and 8 months, in United States prison last year in order to repay a whopping 30 million. It's the Crooks versus the Bank. Conversations recorded by the investigators officers give an intriguing insight into how the so-called business email compromise criminals try to sneak past the fraud prevention measures that the banks have in place. So most companies and large companies, they're looking at your email for this type of fraud where they're trying to pressure you or get you to send money to a fraudulent bank account. So there's a whole lot of software out there that helps you prevent that. Here how you can see them talking to each other about transfer problems and offering advice on those banks in countries that should be avoided because the transfer will trigger a warning. It said I sent 1.1 million pounds to ACC. They said open being in the UK bank landed and now they're asking questions. An open bin or beneficiary is explained by an investigator as an account where a different business account name can be substituted to help in deceiving the victims into sending money. See, sometimes the bank be working with criminals because they want you to run some of that money through their bank, right? Which is money laundering. A house in context, the BABC slang for a bank account used to receive process proceeds of a fraudulent scheme because it provides a temporary home for the funds. Presumably, the money launderer's contacts and other cogs in the cybersecurity gearbox, who sends out so-called money mules to open accounts that are later used for fraud. We're pushing it back against the cost of going through a face-to-face KYC, know your customer checks to open up accounts that ended up getting linked to criminality right away. Here, the money launderer is suggesting that transfer be kept inside the UK are likely to go through, where you're trying to get money out of the countries like to it's likely to provoke more detailed checks and trigger a block, right? So it seems like if you keep the money in the UK, it was a little easier to get. As you probably know, BC is an umbrella term used to describe email-driven cybersecurity crimes where electronic messaging, which often looks perfectly genuine because they are sent from a compromising account inside your own company, are used to persuade someone in the finance department to change the receipt's account details just before a major payment is due. The BC criminals can target a compromised company directly by tricking someone in your own accounts payable department and thinking that a supplier has just swapped bank accounts, is requesting their forthcoming payment to be made to new accounts. Right, because once you steal the money, you got to be able to get to money electronically. And two, you want to run it through legitimate companies, right? Because, right, that's money laundering, cleaning up the money so you can get it. Or still, the BC crooks can target your customers by tricking their accounts payable staff to uncover fraudulent emails that really do originate from your company, that your company has switched bank accounts to require future data or payments to go to a new account. As you can imagine, customers defrauded in this way might not realize that their successful payments have been going astray, assuming the transfer to be fraudulent house and don't get spotted by the banks. Until your own account department noticed that apparently behind a payment instead of the debt collection teams onto them. That sort of confrontation is almost certain to lead to a doubly angry customer, and the resulting data breach publicly really is something you could do without, alongside likely to make good your customers' loss if the bank can't claw back the funds. Right, so if you get tricked and the bank can't get back your funds, it's not the bank fault that you got tricked and your money got sent somewhere else, right? So that's why a lot of people get in cyber insurance for that reason. What to do? We know the banks are able to head off significant amount of BEC style fraud, but that plenty of stolen money nevertheless ends up in the hands of scammers because the DOJ remarks that by his own admission during an 18-month period, defendant conspired to launder over $300 million. Prosecutor wrote in a sentencing memorandum. While much of this intended loss did not ultimately materialize, a boss' willingness and ability to participate in a large-scale money laundering scheme highlights the seriousness of her criminal conduct. Here are some tips you can follow to reduce the risk of getting scammed by Hushpuppies of the world, of course, other criminals. So we'll hit the high part. Turn on two-factor authentication, or MFA, right? Look to see if your features of your service provider, be the banks, financial institutions, ADP, they have what is called XDR, Extended Detection and Response. These tools help search for logins that come from unusual places and track down a network and file activities does not fit a usual pattern, right? Once again, this is software to help you combat that BEC. Enforce a two-step or more process for making significant changes to account or services, especially changing the detail for outgoing payments, right? So how do you change those banking accounts when you need to, right? If you see anything that doesn't look right in email, demanding your attention, assume that you're being scammed, right? Crooks can impersonate your CEO or CFO If it looks funny, just wait a little longer, man. Just always wait a little longer. If you want to check details with another company based on email, never rely on the contact data providing the email, especially when money is involved, right? So I would always pick up the phone and talk to somebody to be honest. Consider using internal training tools to teach your staff about scams. Tools such as the Sophos phishing threats. It teaches your customers what to look in email. Hover over the URL to make sure it's going to the company that it should be going to, right? So those are just standard tricks. So once again, my man, Hushpuppi, Gucci man, right there, getting arrested, man. He was defrauding people, living that fake life, but now he's in bars for 11 years. So question once again is, was it worth it, right? Professor Black Ops, please subscribe.